And the way, the first thing I do, besides, the normal intros, is I get you hooked up to a bilateral stimulation device. And the purpose of that is to activate both sides of the brain, to synchronize them so that one side, which is usually the analytical side, is no longer dominating. And we actually need that side to be able to process what really happened through the other side of the brain, which is the right side, the more creative side that's associated with the left side of the body. So you can do that with a HemiSync device that you can listen to some YouTube video or something from the Monroe Institute is where I started with. And, and then you would wear the earbuds because you got to have this two sounds to synchronize in both ears. Or the device that I prefer to use when I'm working with people one-on-one is it's a device that they're like little handheld eggs, you could say, that pulsate, and they're literally kind of a giving you a little zzz, feeling of pulse. And then I'll have you, since your hands, I like your hands to be freed up more, we put those into your waistband usually, or somewhere on either side of your body. And then that way you don't have to worry about them, and they just kind of go off for that couple hours while we're working. And then the second device is a galvanic skin reading device. So it's it's also called an emotional reader, I think, if you wanted to look it up that way. But it's basically a pressure sensitivity device. So every time I have a reaction to something, my body reacts before my mind processes it. So when I hook you up to this device, the needle will move before you've even processed it. So if I said something like, tell me about your ex-husband, and then that needle just goes like, boom, up to 2, then I know there's kind of a charge there that needs to be worked out. And then we poke around into that area until we can reduce the charge. And that we have to use. So in regular, traditional, old school therapy, which has been proven over and over not to work, pretty much like psychotherapy is just so outdated. But the idea was to process it all through the analytical mind. Okay, what happened? Okay, well, your dad was abused and that's why he did those mean things to you or whatever. Well, those things never actually reach that part of you that needs to actually experience what happened. So usually during trauma, we block out something and then our analytical mind makes up a story. And so what that would look like is, I got in a car wreck, right? So when the shock happens, your analytical brain, which is a perfect computer in a sense, shuts down. And then the other side of your brain is still recording it. But, and I'm giving an analogy a bit of how the universe kind of works on the sidelines. But, science doesn't, I'm not giving you a very scientific way of saying that. That's not really my thing anyway. So if you're looking for that, I probably got to go somewhere else. But so when that side of the brain that's kind of in shock shuts down, it comes out of that later and its body is having a response. So it gets in a car and it's afraid. It feels like, scared. And so then the analytical starts to make a story up, and the story gets bigger, and it usually doesn't really help that the two come together, because that part that really saw what happened, that needs to process it correctly, blocked out. So we're looking to find a way to bring what really happened and feel it and experience it so it can release. And so when you go into a deep state of fear, like you're really afraid of, as a child, like you're super afraid of losing the bonds with your parents and your caregivers or your family or your your teachers, your school systems and things like that. And so you really have a lot of like sort of fear-based energies going around, swimming around in there from childhood that you're not even aware of, that are keeping you from doing things now that really you don't have to be scared of anymore. You're not in a public school, you don't live with your parents. They're not gonna, shame and, be disgusted with you because you like in my case, because I like tarot cards, right? So, that fear though stuck so deeply in me. And everybody has a fear of some sort that's usually stuck, or they would be, riding at the top of the world. So, and what does that look like? And you have to look out there to those examples of what we want to become more like, and realize the most of it's because we have all these fears to develop even the skills, because there's some shame around those skills, or some, guilt or something because of something maybe you've done even that we need to clear. So like, well, I can't get married because I had a girlfriend once and she made me crazy, and so I like hit her and stuff. Well, then that guy's living with the shame of that experience of what he went through, and he can't get into a good relationship because he's still hanging on to that guilt, and he hasn't found a way to make amends and clear that. And so that's what we're looking to do, is go through and clear those things in, a pretty short amount of time, usually 1 or 2 sessions for each kind of lump of something. We can get something pretty knocked out. And then I also, I hold some workshops where we can do stuff in a group, and then you can take it home and kind of start working through things that you're getting triggered on. Because I used to be a light worker, and I realized that it didn't work very well. There was I needed to find my shadow. I needed to confront things that I was afraid of, or confront things in myself in order to even confront my situations so that I could have a better life. And so I started to really become interested in esoteric processes, which aren't afraid at all of the shadow. It's kind of like you have to confront every single new space to get through to the next, zone. And so, that's been a big part of my process and learning. But I also believe in kind of rebuilding and not leaving an empty hole there too, because I went through some stuff a long time ago where, I had a massive clearing and did some, heavy duty psychic training and stuff. And I really was, I would say, in a lot of ways not ready for it. I mean, you can't really say that because if it comes to you ready for it, but I think a lot of people really do go suicidal and commit suicide when they go through things that are too much for them. And so we want to take a process that's loving and also not too isolating, and give support to that, so that we're not driving anybody into a darker state of where there's a hole to be filled again. So if you clear your identity but you don't know who you are anymore, and you don't feel, then you don't have a purpose, you don't feel valuable because you don't have that identity anymore. And those are things that can really hurt. So we want to go through the process carefully and rebuild as well as clear. So that kind of sums up my soul integration process in a nutshell. There's a lot of details in there and a lot of things that I cover that I'm not going over because it kind of doesn't fit with just the general, but it's a whole combination of techniques.